So please welcome our Honorable Chairperson, Mr. Shoaib Sultan Khan.
I invite Dr. Rashid. And of course, the title of this book of the year, Dr. Parvez Sahib. And we are honored that Dr. Hameed Khan's daughter is here, Dr. Akhter Hameed. So he wanted an extension of that 18-month service because under the rules, servants were allowed to take 5 years ex-Pakistan keep it up. But the then establishment secretary, who was a non-service officer, he said this is not possible. You just avail of 18 months leave and you will come. But anyway, there were the superiors thought that for a Pakistani to get a job in the World Bank is an honor. And he was granted that. And I must say, that in my view, he should have took the right decision. He would not have been able to accomplish all what he did at the World Bank in Pakistan. I have also to confess a very great favor that he shared it to me. I don't know if something was there, but I do. You know, in 1972 I was Commissioner Karachi. When the new government came, and the government invited me and said that all these ministers and MPAs are complaining. They have no powers, they have no patronage. Everything is vested in the commissioner. So I said to him, they're not wrong. Daipak Samru used to be my Director General of KDB when I was the chairman. I was the controlling authority of the Karachi Municipal Corporation. 40,000 employees, and all kinds of things. Chairman of the race club, name anything, and commissioner was there. So he said that they have decided to abolish the post. I said, well, that was always your prerogative. But he said, I'd like to let you stay on in Sindh. This was my first posting in Sindh. Really want to help me, then I'd like to go to the Pakistan Academy for Rural Development, inshallah. Anyway, I did manage to get there. The commissioner's post was later on revived after 3 years in a very dynamic form. My reason for going to the academy was because I came to know that Akhtar Hameed Khan had come to West Pakistan. And I had seen what he had worked there in Kumila, and I was working as a assistant commissioner there. So I thought that I'd be able to get his help. Anyway, he was very dejected at that time. He was going to Michigan State University as a visiting professor. But he came to see what I had started at the academy, like Kumila, the Gauze project. And he said, keep on sending me annual reports, your monthly reports. So I kept on sending him the monthly reports, and he will send me his instructions every month. After a year, I was holding a seminar, international seminar, and I sent him an invitation, because it was all fully paid by Ford Foundation, that why don't you come for a week and attend this, and you will have the pleasure of having you here. And he replied in his typical way that this is waste of your money and waste of my time. But if you really want me, then I'm prepared to come as your advisor at a salary of 1,500 rupees. I was overjoyed. I invited him. And in 3 years, Dawzi became very famous in terms of the donor support. But and as you know, in Pakistan, all kinds of jealousies started, and everyone, and a movement was started that what Dawzi is doing, organizing the Pakhtuns, because Dawzi was in Kerala, that's really to overthrow the government. And I tried to explain to them, but we also explained to them no way. And one day I received an order appointing me as OSD, officer on special duty, which means that you have no work. Anyway, Hameed Khan told us that he left Pen Black Initiative. But I found that an FIA team was sent to the academy to investigate what I was doing. And I must say the FIA in those days was not like the present FIA. They came to the conclusion this is nonsense. But I decided to leave the service, and but I can't do the work that I want to do. I took leave. In the meanwhile, government was changed, and the new government said that you should come back. And I was appointed in Cabinet Division as a Joint Secretary, but still I didn't want to stay. And it was at this juncture that Ishrat appeared from somewhere, I don't know. He had put up these old troubles where we had to come. And when he heard what I was saying, he said to me that, well, he knows somebody, UN Center for Regional Development in Nagoya, Japan, and they would certainly be interested in what you had done. And he wrote to them. And lo and behold, an offer came to me as a consultant. But the same friend of Ishrat, established secretary, he said, no, government servants can't receive direct offers. But there was a very powerful cabinet secretary, Mr. Naik. He wrote on that. The offer has come to Cabinet Division, and I have nominated Shoaib Sultan Khan in the And whatever I have done since then, whether it is the UN, UNICEF, or RSP, or later on South Asia Poverty Division Brigade, and of course since 2003 when I retired, working in operating capacity with all the RSPs, I owe that debt to Gujarat. Thank you very much, Ishrat. Thank you.
I would like to invite Dr. Ishrat to come and talk to us.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected Sultan Khan, respected Shoaib Sultan Khan, Dr. Rashid Bajwa. Before I start my presentation, I would like to say that whatever Shoaib Saab has said is highly exaggerated. All I did was to recognize that there is an asset in Pakistan which is not being allowed to do what this country needs. And I was very much interested in development for developing countries as a whole. So I thought that he would make a big impact for his commitment, his work in international circle, and things may then simmer down in Pakistan and he would come back with that experience. So I act only as an intermediary, but he established himself on his own, that he was sought after by the UNICEF, by UNDP, by many international organizations. So I just wanted to set the record straight because you had given too much credit to me, which I don't deserve. I'm extremely honored, but also humbled to be asked to deliver Akhtar Hameed Khan Memorial Lecture this evening. I'm grateful to my mentor and lifelong teacher, Shoaib Sultan Khan, for his kind gesture in bestowing this honor. I would like at this stage to pay my personal tribute to Shoaib Sahab for keeping the memory of Akhtar Hameed Khan Sahib alive by organizing this lecture every year. Shoaib Sahab's single-minded devotion to the cause espoused by Akhtar Hameed Sahab deserves our great gratitude. He has faced so many hurdles and difficulties in the journey of over 5 decades, but he has never given up and persisted with his mission with zeal and dedication. I must confess that there are more distinguished persons better qualified than me to speak about that great giant. But having been provided this opportunity, let me share a few thoughts with you as to how we can continue to celebrate and perpetuate his legacy. My first interaction with this great man was when the CSP probationers of 1964 batch were deputed to attend the course at the Rural Development Academy in Comilla. His simple manners, unassuming and down-to-earth personality, his vision and practices impressed all of us. However, some of us, including myself, were bitten by his passion for poverty alleviation, participatory development, organizing the communities, empowering them to design and undertake interventions that would benefit them, and treating women as partners in development. Akhtar Hameed Sahab was a firm believer that the NGO workers or academy faculty members can only provide technical support but not prescribe to the communities or direct them in carrying out their tasks. The idea was to mobilize and energize the communities to realize their potential as they understood their problems best and also were successful in finding solutions. What outsiders can do is to extend a helping hand in building their capacity. His approach of participatory development, listening to the people's problems, helping to build their capacity, organize them into groups, and mobilize resources locally has stuck with me throughout my professional life. I just wish to recapitulate for the benefit of some younger audience present here as to what this popular Comilla model for which Akhtar Hameed Sahab is world famous was. Briefly, the model was based on self-help and self-reliance principles of bottom-up development of rural population that can increase farm productivity, eliminate food deficit, reduce unemployment, and thus alleviate poverty. The main components of the model were a Thana Training and Development Center where training was imparted to village leaders and organizers, a road drainage and embankment program, the small-scale irrigation program, and two-tiered cooperative system with primary cooperatives operating at the village level and federations operating at the Thana level. Each primary cooperative elected a management committee who selected their representatives for Thana Association. Managerial and technical skills trainings were imparted at TDC, and savings were mobilized from the members of the cooperatives on a regular basis, and then credit was distributed among them for inputs and the small increments. An evaluation of the Comilla Thana cooperatives revealed that there were perceptible increase in the yields of rice crop, which was the main crop in East Pakistan and Bangladesh, cultivated by the cooperative members, and the spillover effects on non-members gradually became apparent as they also started using the same modern techniques and inputs which the cooperative members were using, and therefore there was an increase in the overall yields in that Comilla Thana. As a young additional deputy commissioner in Chittagong, I was fortunate to find a foreign service officer, Mehboob Alam Chashi, with whom I collaborated in setting up a Ngunia Thana development project, replicating the Comilla model. Although I was transferred as Deputy Secretary to Dhaka, I continued to take active interest in Ngunia projects thanks to Mehboob Alam. Later on, many other initiatives, including Grameen Bank, BRAC, and ASHA, swept the entire landscape of Bangladesh through their involvement in microcredit, family planning, education, health, drinking water, sewerage, and nutrition. 50 years later, the entire scene in Bangladesh has changed. Those who are interested in catching up with the Bangladesh development story can find that in my article that appeared recently in dawn of December 16, 2021. I distinctly remember the period during which Shoaib Saab was resurrecting the Comilla model at Al Said. He persuaded Akhtar Hameed to join the academy as an advisor. As usual, Shoaib Saab was kind enough to invite me, a very junior officer at that time, to present a paper and speak at an international conference he had organized at the academy. Akhtar Hameed was advisor to the academy at that time, and I had the privilege of talking to him and listening to him. The conference was highly successful and evinced interest from others who wanted to replicate the Al-Zahi model in NWFP around KP. However, I was very sad to see that local intrigues and jealousies and parochialism got hold of the chief secretary, and Shoaib Saab was transferred from the academy, and the Dawood Zahi experiment had to be abandoned, and thus it failed to achieve the desired result. Akhtar Hameed Saab resigned and went back to Karachi. He initiated and set up the Orangi pilot project supported by Al Hassan Abidi. Abdi Saab had grandiose ideas of massive intervention, but Khan Sahib was more realistic and wanted an action research experiment before scaling it up. He started on a modest scale, learned from that experiment, and then he was prepared to replicate it after debugging and fine-tuning. Arif Hassan, in his 2019 Memorial Lecture here, has elaborated on the OPP, but suffice it to say that this project was a departure from Comilla model as it was directed on urban settlements and where the poor lived without access to basic services such as drinking water, sewerage, sanitation, paved streets. But the underlying approach of working with the communities, empowering them, mobilizing local resources, training them, and the project staff providing technical support and not second-guessing the communities remained intact and was applied with suitable modifications to OPP. I got the impression during my brief conversation with him that he had become disillusioned with financial dependency on government or the donor community. He therefore emphasized mobilizing local resources from the community for their own development, although this process was slow and would take time to generate results. Let me quote his views for better. Begin the quote. As I look back, I realize that there is one main feature in Pakistan which is very disturbing: the failure of governance. Things which were done competently in the colonial past are neglected. Let me give you an example. In the Punjab, the world's largest irrigation network was built by Indian experts. The chief engineer might have been an Englishman, but he had worked in India for 20 to 30 years. He was not a London-based consultant, but an Indian officer, and all his assistants were Indians. Now take, for instance, the sewage system in Karachi. Its last expansion took place in Ayub Khan's time. Since then, it has been grossly neglected and is all silted up and choked. We are sitting on a time bomb. Now what has been done to rectify Karachi sewage? The government of Pakistan and the Karachi Water and Sewerage Board have rushed to the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank and asked for loans. The first condition of loans is that the bank would bring foreign consultants. So foreign consultants came and they recommended the most modern system, which was not only 10 times more expensive than the old system we had, but also it was inoperable in Karachi. It was too deep and sophisticated. It needed robots at that time to clean it. In the old system, the nalas would be cleaned by scavengers, as they not only had to go down 8 feet instead of 30 feet. We have been researching this problem in Karachi for the last 8 to 9 years, and we are lucky that we have won our fight with the Asian Bank and the World Bank, who are willing to accept our alternative model, that's a local design, which is much cheaper, functional, and already connected to thousands of sewers. But our problem is the Sewerage Board's foreign aid section, which is as willing to give up the foreign loan as a heroin addict is willing to give up heroin. They are not willing to forego the thrills and the highs that they get from dollar loans, unquote. So this is what he was trying to do in Orangi and from Orangi to Karachi. His opinion, and I agree with him, that mobilizing domestic resources and investing them carefully and judicially is sustainable in the long run, as it does not depend on the whims and caprices of the government of the day or the changing fads of the donors. In retrospect, I find how foresighted and right he was, as I have witnessed a number of projects started by the governments belonging to one political party abandoned, neglected, or under-resourced by the incoming government. The country suffers a double whammy. All the costs of the previous projects have gone waste with zero benefits, and new costs are incurred on the new signature projects without any assurance that they would be completed within the time framework or original cost estimates. The damage is even more grave when we borrow from international or bilateral agencies, pay inordinately, and the cost overruns are run into several multiples of the original estimates. Neelam Jhelam is an illuminating example of this phenomenon. Worse than that is a scenario where the priorities of the donor agencies shift and they withdraw assistance midstream from ongoing projects or slow down their disbursements. Pakistan, unfortunately, is a graveyard of incomplete, abandoned and aborted projects. If we had listened to Akhtar Hameed Sahab and followed his advice, I think at least we would have salvaged ourselves to some extent. I want to clarify here that I am not arguing against external borrowing per se, but only submitting that this decision should be driven by a common sensical principle. That is, when the economic and financial returns on these borrowed resources exceed the cost of servicing and repaying those loans and generate a stream of net positive benefits over the cycle, life cycle of the project, then alone it is prudent to borrow. Let me take a minute to explain what I'm trying to say. At macro level, if our domestic saving rates is only 15% of GDP, we are constrained to invest only that amount in our economy. Assume that 5% of investment generates 1% growth in GDP. So 15 divided by 5, we can expect 3% GDP growth. Now, at this speed, our per capita incomes will double from $1,600 to $3,200 in next 70 years, given the average population growth rate of 2% per annum. This is definitely unacceptable, as we have a large workforce of young men and women entering the labor markets every year looking for jobs. What are then the options available to us to increase the rate of investment and go for higher growth? Either we increase our domestic savings rates, and that's what Bangladesh and India have done, starting from the same base as ours. Both have reached saving rates of 30%. Or borrow externally, which we have been doing incessantly, or attract foreign direct investment for productive and export purposes, or send more workers overseas to earn and remit the money back home, or take measures to reduce our population growth. These are the 5 ways in which we would be able to raise our investment ratios and aspire for a higher growth rate. Akhtar Hameed Saab's approach, in my view, was sound. He thought that the local communities are willing to save if they are convinced that their incomes would rise over time and the living conditions of the neighborhoods, villages, towns where they live would improve. Now, as a development economist, I can cite you empirical evidence from Ghana to Guatemala, which clearly show that people are willing to pay taxes, fees, cesses, user charges to their local governments as compared to the provincial or the federal government. Why? Because they can see for themselves that these resources are being used for their welfare and better living conditions in the areas where they belong. However, as the distance from local use of these resources to provincial or national use increases, the willingness to pay taxes diminishes because they are not sure where their taxes are going to be used or for what purpose. For them, it is a black box. They are skeptical that they would get any benefits from those far off, centrally determined decisions on allocation of these resources. Akhtar Hameed Saab's efforts to mobilize savings of the local communities through their own associations and used them for microcredit that provides them capital to expand their businesses and working as volunteers on in community infrastructure projects under Comilla model has led to the revolution in microcredit in almost all developing countries. Professor Yunus's Grameen Bank efforts in pioneering microcredit and microsavings have been replicated successfully, but also demonstrated that females of my long and multiple discipleship, unquote. For him, it was continuous lifelong learning which kept his work relevant and responsive. Adapting to changing circumstances and confronting new challenges may have led him to think anew and practice differently, but the basic premise and underlying thought of empowering and organizing the communities to make decisions for themselves remain intact. Whether it was Comilla, Daudsai, Orangi, RSP, whether it was rural development, village and Thana level cooperatives, microcredit and microsavings, urban regeneration, sewage, sanitation or water supply, he always relied upon the collective wisdom and the judgment of the people who were affected by those decisions and were the beneficiaries of those interventions. When the unintended consequences of his experiments led to the benefits being captured, not by the target group he had intended to reach out, but others who did not deserve to appropriate those benefits, he was honest and straightforward in recognizing and conceding so. He said, and I quote, "In Comilla, better drainage, link road and irrigation have substantially enhanced the value of the land and its strength. The unearned increment to the landowners is 100 times more than the wages earned by the laborers." So although he was trying to target the labor class, but the benefits of his interventions were being captured by the landowners because they had the asset. But he was honest enough to concede that this is what really happened. How many of us, pardon me saying, have this kind of moral courage to say that I have really made a mistake and I should rectify that mistake? But very few people have that kind of courage as Akhtar Hameed was. His critics used to complain that the projects initiated under him never beyond the pilot stage. That was it, criticism against him, and were never scaled up. But in my humble view, they don't realize that in an organic, flexible, pragmatic approach, the selfless devotion and commitment of those attempting to replicate those models in other parts is a sign for no. Scaling up requires adaptation to local conditions, persistence despite temporary setbacks and difficulties. And how many Shoaib Sultans, Nasim Siddiquis, Arif Hassans, Parveen Rahmans, and Anwar Rashids can we find in this country who can lead such efforts? A number of so-called experts and smooth-talking charlatans appear on the scene to exploit the unassailable name of Akhtar Hameed and his model, but end up giving a lot of grief rather than relief to the poor. How many people, even those having the right aptitude and conviction, have the knowledge and the skills to persuade the people and mobilize them around a particular cause? How many of us have the patience to listen to the poor people, understand their perspectives, and let them do what they think is in their collective best interests? In a patriarchal society like ours, where the father knows the best, the teacher knows the best, the political leaders know the best, the voices of poor remain unheeded. Let us look at the plethora of poverty reduction projects in Pakistan from 1950s. Village aid, Public Works Program, Integrated Rural Development Projects, 5 Points Package, People's Work Program, Khushal Pakistan Program, Benazir Income Support Program, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, Ehsaas Program. What do they have in common? They are all top-down interventions, conceptualized, designed, and delivered by technocrats and bureaucrats like me. What the poor in whose name were these projects conceived had any say? Were they even asked to provide any feedback as to the appropriateness of these interventions? A rough back of the envelope calculation would show that we have sunk trillions of rupees, both domestic fiscal resources and borrowed external funds for these programs. Are we sure that the benefit cost ratio in terms of reaching out the intended target group was positive? While it is true that the incidence of poverty has been on a declining path in Pakistan, but this has much to do with a strong correlation with economic growth. The living standards of the poor in terms of jobs, livelihood, access to basic public goods and services such as education, health, sanitation, and sewage, clean environment, public transport have not improved compared to other neighboring countries and in relation to the public money which has been spent on these poverty reduction projects and programs. Akhtar Hameed never considered NGOs as a substitute for the state, but as a supplement to aid the state in fulfilling its obligations, as he always pleaded to the workers of NGOs to act their roles as providers of technical support to the communities rather than directing them or advising them what to be doing. And this is something some of the NGOs with due apology have a very different approach. They know what needs to be done, and they will come in with the donor money and say, this is what you should be doing. That is not what Akhtar Hameed's vision about the role of the NGOs was. In my view, there are very few people who epitomize a combination of idealism and practical action. He was a person who embodied passion and commitments to the cause he espoused, but wise and discerning enough to use reason and evidence in the design and delivery. Some of the issues on which he worked and made us aware are still alive today, but their intensity and coverage has changed with the passage of time. I would like to conclude by dwelling on two issues that I consider are of critical importance to the economic and social progress of Pakistan. First is female empowerment and participation. There is now a strong evidence, both from cross-country as well as in-country studies, that investment in female education has the highest rate of return. This does not capture the collateral benefits of better nutrition, clean environment, educating the children, immunization and vaccination, family spacing, that an educated mother is able to provide to the society and the family. Pakistan today ranks in the bottom rung of gender parity indices, a horrific 152 out of 156. Our female participation rate is only 25%. That too is dominated by unpaid family workers in agriculture sector. Since the abolition of quota for girls, our medical colleges have a disproportionately high intake of females on merit. Arif Hassan in his 2019 Memorial Address disclosed that 87% medical students are women, 68% of the students attending Karachi University 92% of architecture and planning and 38% of engineering students were women. Our higher educational institutions produce female graduates and postgraduates of some high quality. And I personally can testify that out of the 12 in the dean's list at IPA, at least 10 or 11 used to be females. But social taboos and old ways of thinking have deprived the society and economy from utilizing the talent of these highly qualified engagements. Employees would also tell you that the relative performance of the female employees in their organization is superior and they are more productive. It is therefore a pity that in such highly conducive conditions, our gender disparities are so stark and our per capita income is not inching upward. Imagine for a minute if our female labor participation rate, excluding the unpaid family workers, rises to 35%, how much would that add to our national income and per capita income? Microcredit has made some headway in Pakistan and females are beginning to take advantage of it, but we have a long way to go to achieve the desired results. As an humble but proud person who brought microcredit within the supervisory ambit of the central bank as a first mover, I'm still telling my colleagues, and Rashid Bajwa is a witness to it, that they have to broaden their coverage towards females and backward districts of Pakistan. We have to get out of the KLI syndrome, which is Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. They have to go out and work in Balochistan, which has the highest number of poor and the most illiterates. Freelancing opportunities for women have multiplied, and the use of digital connectivity, increased networks, literacy and payment systems, along with expanding e-commerce platforms, have reduced the constraint on the mobility of female workers. Microcredit institutions therefore should develop new products in areas of education, healthcare, agriculture, and commerce, whereby the females can learn new techniques and equip themselves with skills that can allow them to compete in this digital economy. Bangladesh, that was part of our country, has demonstrated that social indicators do improve when females participate in the labor force. A number of research studies have also shown that financial independence of females reduces domestic violence and promotes greater harmony within the family. The second topic I would like to take up this evening is the evolving role of NGOs, non-profit organizations, civil society organizations, whatever you call them, and the experience which have been gained during the last 50 years or so. Development literature has traditionally focused on the state and markets as the main instruments of promoting socio-economic development. More recent experiences have shown, at least in the context of South Asia, that NGOs can be a third pillar in the development process. Let me be selective and take a few names, although the list is quite comprehensive. Komila Thana Project, OBP, NRSP, Akuwa, TCF, Grameen Bank, RAC, Asha, Care India, Seva, Pratham are some of the examples of successful organizations in this region. Pardon me if I have not included many equally powerful organizations in this list. My universe is limited only to those engaged in delivering of services and participating in development. There are equally well-respected and reputed rights-based organizations and others active in advocacy issues. I have not included them because my attention is on the delivery of services. Why should we always consider that this is the obligation of the government only? why can't we say that this is a whole nation approach, all hands on the deck? Why I say that? We are not saying that you take away the constitutional responsibilities and obligations from the state. But if the state is not able to fulfill its obligations, and I give you a very concrete example of that. The first time the universal primary education target was mentioned was in 1960 Education Policy Report. Since then, every successive education policy, and believe me, there have been so many with the change of each government, have kept on fixing a new date. The result today is that today we have more than 20 million children of the ages 5 to 16 out of school, and our net enrollment ratios at primary, middle, higher secondary, and tertiary levels lag behind our neighboring countries who started with the same base. So universal primary education is a constitutional obligation, and we are depriving these and other future entrants of school going ages from getting their basic right because our governments are unable to get their act together. Now, what we need to do is to expand the number of schools, teachers, and facilities so that these kids can see a better life in the future rather than being condemned forever. Low-cost private schools, NGOs, local communities are all working to supplement the government efforts in bringing these children to schools. Private schools are serving the lower middle and upper middle income classes who can afford to pay the expenses from their own pockets. It is paradoxical that the unit cost of educating a child at public school is higher than that of the private school because the government teachers are paid twice as much as those in the private schools, while the quality is relatively poor. The niche NGOs provide is that they cater to the children of poor and deprived segments of the population without incurring any financial burden upon parents, which they cannot afford. Well-functioning NGOs have now a track record of effectiveness in reaching out to those communities and at the same time approaching well-to-do philanthropic individuals, businesses, and corporates to provide financing for these schools. Their costs of delivering identical services are lower compared to the public sector and profit-seeking private sector without compromising on quality. Therefore, on efficiency, larger outreach, and better targeting grounds, it is my view that the NGOs can play a more useful role in fulfilling and filling some of the existing gaps in our educational system. I do welcome the Adopt a School scheme, which has been designed by the provincial educational foundations and in some cases educational departments, whereby the NGOs in the private sector are handed over the school buildings and infrastructure to manage and operate the schools. Although there are some issues pertaining to deployment of teachers, but anecdotal evidence shows that the students do learn better at these schools, teachers turn up regularly, and the costs are contained. There are many constraints faced by the government educational managers which are beyond their control. There is too much centralization and concentration of powers at the provincial headquarters. Supervision and monitoring are weak. The school management committees are defunct and devoid of any real authority and financial resources. Under this scenario, ladies and gentlemen, I would very earnestly urge the NGOs and local community organizations to become more proactive and work towards bringing the number of out-of-school children at all levels within schools. One of the areas that should explore is the non-formal education of the dropouts, including the management and operation of technical and vocational training institutes, in which all three, the government, the private sector, and NGOs become partners. All of them don't have to be fancy and sophisticated schools, but modest and responsive to the local needs. For example, in the rural areas, tractor mechanics, agricultural implements, and equipment repairs and maintenance technicians are in demand. Government provides buildings and equipment. Private sector develops curriculum, content, pedagogical tools, and the NGOs mobilize the communities to emphasize that they should send their children who have been out of their school to attend and learn the marketable skills that are in heavy demand within the country as well as outside. I would urge NRSP and her sister organization, which have presence at the grassroots levels with several million members, to take the lead along with the other international, national, regional, and local NGOs in this area which requires urgent intervention. I would be remiss if I do not mention that another area where the NGOs have to play an active role is raising the awareness among the communities about climate change and its consequences for food, water, energy nexus. But this is a topic which would require a separate but intensive discussion. But I thought that looking at the future prospects, we should not ignore the challenges of climate change, which would also require the whole of the nation approach, in which NGOs would also have to play an important role. Ladies and gentlemen, we would pay a befitting tribute to the memory of Akhtar Hameed Khan if we are able to focus our attention on minimizing gender disparities and maximizing opportunities for our females in education and productive employment, and reducing the number and proportion of out-of-school children at all levels through proactive partnership between the government, private sector, and the NGOs. Thank you very much.
For our next speaker is Dr. Parvez Tahir, who is currently the President of Council of Social Sciences. He has a PhD in economics from the University of Cambridge and has extensive service to Pakistan, as he has served as Deputy Economic Advisor of Ministry of Finance and so forth. Dr. Parvez is the author of numerous books, and we are very familiar with his articles, which are regularly published in the national newspapers. Please welcome Dr. Parvez Tahir.
Mr. Sardarji, Mr. Shoaib Sultan Khan, mentor and the legend that lives on, Dr. Shoaib Hussain, our speaker, Dr. Rashid Bajwa, who made it all happen, and of course, Dr. Aisha Khan, who is organizing this ceremony. I stand here, ladies and gentlemen, as President of the Council the last quarter of 1999, when a group of intellectuals and social scientists got together and focused on a mission which I think I will lead, and eventually formed and registered the Council of Social Sciences as a service-oriented, non-profit, non-partisan and autonomous organization of social scientists of Pakistan, including non-Pakistanis interested in studying Pakistan. It is committed to the advancement of a pluralistic approach to social sciences while remaining committed to objectivity, rationality, and creativity is essential element of science. The choice of Dr. Akhtar Hameed Khan as an annual lecture, annual commemorative lecture was very important. Dr. Akhtar Hameed Khan was a great social scientist in his own right. Dr. Ishwar talked about organic and pragmatic. If you add sociological to it, this is exactly Akhtar Hameed Khan defined his approach to social science. The council is grateful to NRSP for its revival, and we are now trying to live up to our mission. You know, the council produced 6 very good studies on social sciences in its first 6 years, and its founder, Inayatullah, it was his labor of love. You know, the council really worked effectively while he was alive, and then we have had the usual problems that we have in our organizations that don't seek money from abroad or even from the government. So it had its problems. 5 books on social sciences, 1 on Association of Social Sciences, edited by Inayatullah, by the present director of IPA, by Rubina Segal, and many other big names. We are now trying to revive ourselves, and our first task was to have an inaugural lecture which we had in October last year. The second was to come alive with this award. And now we are planning to hold a conference on state of the social sciences in Pakistan. And we want to then make it a regular feature and produce an annual report. There is another activity, recalling our pioneers. We have published some papers in the past, but now we have some 15 or 16 papers ready to recall our pioneers. And I would request Dr. Ishwar to do one on Memory, because I think that is a great list there. And the award this time was selected by a committee set up by our executive committee, and the award went to a book by Fayaz Parker, Social Transformation in Pakistan, the Art and Science of Linking with the Other. Now this other, I think Dr. Shoaib Sultan's lecture was all about the other, the legend of the earth, the bottom, and so on. And this book actually is a walking tour of how can one reach the bottom. How do you help people help themselves? How do you sort of learn from the people so that they can change their own life with some technical assistance? So this is a book about that. And it almost self-selected because it has the director's relationship with the agenda that we had, and therefore this award was given. And you know, we have in libraries a rare books room, manuscripts room. With this book there, you will not have to go to a manuscript room, you will not have to go to a rare books room, you will have it all here. You will see Mr. Shoaib Sultan walking through the mass of the poor that we have in this country. And also it contains some papers of Dr. Akhtar Hameed Khan, which is actually a very interesting thing. It has an interesting perspective. Here you see a mentor and then a mentor of mentors together, and you see how ideas have the power to change into action. Thank you. Now I will request Mr. Sarkar to give the award. We have 100,000 rupees also donated by NRSP. But the author is in Canada, so this grandfather is going to receive the award. Mr. Ramshaw.
Our next speaker is Dr. Aisha Khan, who is the CEO of Akhtar Hameed Khan Foundation. Please give her a warm welcome.
Respected Chairman, Honorable Speaker, Dr. Shilpa, Senator Sirtaji, Dr. Bajwa, Dr. Sahib, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to keep 5 minutes, and on behalf of Akhtar Hameed Khan Foundation, I would like to, it's a pleasure to be a host along with NRSP and Council of Social Sciences on the Akhtar Hameed Khan Memorial Lecture and Book Award. I want to start by saying, Shoaib Sahib has already said that I had the amazing privilege of knowing the great man. He truly was. He was a great professional, but he was more than anything an amazing father and a role model. Growing up in Karachi, where I saw him how he started Orangi Pilot Project. I was too young to remember Kumilla and Daud Saeed, but I saw how he started Orangi Pilot Project with committed and like-minded people. Shoaib Sahib, I've seen since the day I was born. Joining him through the process, so Arif Hassan, Nasim Yousaf, and Anwar Rashid, like-minded, committed people who stayed with him till the end and were there from the beginning. Truly, he was a man of what we say simple living and high thinking. He never believed in monuments or wealth, and to him, the love of the people and service to humanity was what drove him. So today, what he would have been really proud of is to see how the RSPNs and their helping of millions of households how Khuda Ki Basti, founded by Nasim Yousaf, how Changa Pani in Faisalabad is improving the lives of people and making things better. That is what he would have been so immensely proud, and his eyes would have shown up and he would have had that little impish smile. That's what he would have been proud of. Just want to point out he was 66 years old when he started Orangi pilot project, an urban model, a bit of a deviation from his Kumilla Academy and Daudzai. So, but he was 66, and over the next 18-19 years while he remained alive, he passed away in 99, he transformed it into a development model for the world. I'm also happy to share that the Akhtar Hameed Khan Foundation, which is kind of an organic and natural progression from the resource center that NRSP and Shoaib Saab started in 2010, is now a registered Section 42 non-profit company. And it's located in I-94 Islamabad, and we have a research and training center in Rawalpindi, Tokhasu, Rawalpindi. Under the umbrella of the foundation, what are the things we want to do? So we want to collaborate with universities and learning centers. One, study the social experimentation on how Kumilla, Daudzai, OPP, what is the learning from them in so many areas, and then going forward in our today's world, how does that learning translate and evolve? Particularly in the light of technology, social media, communities are becoming wiser and changing. How does it all come together? How do we evolve? So I would really encourage our young professionals to please come and engage with us, those who are interested in economics and development, because that's what the research center seeks to engage in. To come and visit our research and training center, to study the models and to write books and papers, and even as Dr. Ishwar mentioned, what is the role of the third pillar? I mean, NGOs in Pakistan are taking off, but how can we make our role more effective and produce? Pakistan is one of the least knowledge product producing countries compared to India and Bangladesh. We seldom or rarely produce papers that are part of the global debate. Yes, we have lots of reports and all, but papers and big part of the global debate. So that's what the foundation seeks to achieve. And two, as Shoaib Saab pointed out, he was a lifelong learner. He spent a lifetime doing pilots, and his pilots were amazingly successful. That's what we want to do. This research and training center is a pilot site for women-centered economic and health interventions. We want to learn what works and what doesn't work, because even in knowing what doesn't work, there is a learning. And that's where we want to learn, write, and produce to contribute to the global debate. Once again, thank you very much for your participation, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
It is my honor to introduce our last speaker, Dr. Rashid Bajwa, who is the CEO of NRSP. Dr. Bajwa is implementing one of the largest rural development and microfinance program in Pakistan. He holds a Master's of Public Health degree from UK and an MBBS from Pakistan. Please welcome Dr. Rashid Bajwa.
Before I speak, may I request Sartaj Ji Saab to come over and say, will you speak up? That's what we say, right. So thank you very much. My job here is to thank everyone. I just have a couple of ideas which I wanted to convey to you. One is that these are some living legends sitting in front of you. And the living legends starting from Shoaib Sultan Khan. I mean, his simple, straightforward, simple idea of social mobilization. Never deviating from the simple fact about how potentially poor and how he's been able to start from RSP, took this social mobilization approach to the rest of South Asia and particularly Pakistan. I'm privileged to have been part of this journey with him to have developed where we are in terms of NRSP. As a result, I must also tell you that at this stage, as we speak, more than 45% of rural population stands organized. One person, one idea, 45% of the country gets organized in rural area. So that is an achievement by itself. The other living legend, of course, is Mr. Sultan Aziz, who is an architect, so he joined far with the nephew. But then his idea of setting up first the NRSP itself, it was his idea, and then brought Shoaib Sultan Khan. And then, of course, the Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. So one man creating two institutions which have actually changed the rural development scene in this country and perhaps beyond in India as well as Bangladesh as well. And of course, the third is Dr. Ishrat Hussain, because he, when he was Governor of State Bank, he is the pioneer of actually creating this institutionalization of microfinance. And we are very thankful to him because of his efforts that NRSP Microfinance Bank came into existence. So three people, three legends in front of you who have created institutions. And lastly, I must also tell you that all these people in front of you, they are ex-civil servants. So, and most of them retired prematurely. They either resigned or prematurely. So for my younger civil service colleagues, it's not bad to resign and try to seek something which is near your heart and to follow your passion. And there are a lot of successes which come along the way. I have seen colleagues who have left the civil service or left the government jobs and have created their own islands of development. So, and of course, thank you every one of you who have come here to have graced the occasion. It is a privilege for NRSP to set up this whole sitting and gathering today, and also to be part of the Council of Social Sciences and to provide Akhtar Hameed Khan award as well as the lecture. So thank you very much.
I was delighted when I received confirmation from Mr. Sultan Aziz's participation in this lecture. I first met Mr. Sultan Aziz when he was working at Rome, and he had really his hand inside my heart. I think it was Deputy Minister who spoke about RSP. In 1984, he came to visit RSP. 83 years. And after his visit, of course, the means interest for them perfectly. But Sultan Aziz, he would sort of enter into dialogues with the villagers and visit every place and all that. And I don't know if you know it, that Sultan Aziz was the first one to write a book on the Chinese experimental communism and all that. So when I was going away, he said to me that, look, when I went to China and saw what they had done, he said, I thought that maybe you have to have a communist ideology to do it. But after seeing what you're doing in NRSP, I think that really it can be done without the ideology, because 90%, he said, was organization, 10% was ideology. And you had discarded that 10% was the private ownership. Right? So, from that day, he has been such an intense supporter of rural support programs that much of what we have achieved we really support. Because in government, as you know, I was in government for 25 years, but the government's changed and then their interest is very temporary. So I feel it a great honor that he has come to honor us and also accepted my request. Anybody else would have said that, well, you did tell me beforehand, but I just didn't ask. But please come and preside. And of course, I'd like to say that
distinguished members of the audience. Attending any function in honor of Akhtar Hameed Khan was a very inspiring experience because there are very few people in the subcontinent who enjoy his integrity, his creativity, his ability, the qualities that are mentioned in detail. And so, as someone said, the most powerful force in the world is the idea whose time has come. So his idea of community participation has traveled and is traveling and will go on traveling. So the number of lives that idea has affected is now immeasurable, and that's why it is important that we pay this tribute to him and we give some thanks and RSP for doing this. As Shoaib Sultan said, in 1978 I published my book Rural Development Learning from China after visiting 3 times. And there was a seminar in Oxford on it. So a Pakistani professor asked me, what does it mean for Pakistan? I said, I don't know. I said, conceptual model. It's a comprehensive model where the political prerequisites there. There is an intermediate model, and then there are partial models, those who can't get out of it. So somebody has to do social political research in Pakistan to find out what will work. This was 1981-82. So I used to come to Pakistan only every 2 years, 81 and 83. So when I came in 81, I told the minister that from now onward, I'm going to explore which model of rural development is appropriate for Pakistan. We also had in FAO in 1979 a rural development conference worldwide in which all the rural development policies were discussed and reviewed, so I had access to those. So I told the minister that I will go with you whenever you are traveling. So he arranged a number of trips to agriculture, and the president visited many farmers, discussed with them, and so on. When I coming on my next leave in 1983, he told me that Shoaib Sultan has just arrived, and from Sri Lanka and started the RSP. And when I told him we were coming, he said, please must bring it around. So I and Akhtar who has the Charlie now and the 3 of us went to Gilgit for a week. And it was a very sort of enlightening experience because social mobilization was there. It was a simple model. The social organizer would find out what the problem is and then tell them how to solve it. And not giving them handouts, but helping them to mobilize volunteers and resources. And so I began to think in a non-communist, non-governmental kind of view that this kind of mobilization, obviously we discussed Akhtar Hameed Khan's philosophy of self-help, self-organization and self-reliance. So I said this is the model that might work. So I told Sultan Shoaib Khan that I'll from IFAD give a loan of $10 million if RSP could be extended into NRSP. But how does the RSP extend itself? In fact, Father Najua and Zamani Sahib, Mr. Rural Development, he said that I tried to extend them and didn't follow what I was saying. So I told Jamil, I said, this is something for which I have to come back to Pakistan. I can't plant this idea from outside. So in 84, I came back, although I still 4 years contract in PhD level with the UN. And actually, in 83, November, Akhtar Hameed, who was the Minister of Rural Development, resigned his job as Group Minister because he lost the local bodies chairman elections in Multan. So Jamil told me the Rural Development Ministry is now vacant and elections are also coming in 1985. So this is the time if you want to come. I said, okay, please discuss. The General Ziaulak, he discussed and Ziaulak said, for him I have a standing invitation, ask him to come. So when I came, he said, I think rural development is one. So subject, you come as Minister of State Agriculture, cooperation is there, and you do whatever. So that's how I came. And from that time onwards, we started off with the 5-point program, the social action program. But then when I became finance minister in 1991, that's the time when the opportunity came to support. So Sultan Shah had a chance to meet Mimar Sharif and he invited him to explain the RSP model to the 4 chief ministers. And I chaired the second half of the session and it was agreed that it will be extended. So he said, 3 साल में सब लोग prepared. He said it can't be done like that. It has to be done gradually because the software is more important than money. But from the privatization fund, I allocated 100 crores of rupees to NRSP and made sure that it's an endowment and not a budget allocation which will lapse when the government changes. So from the profit, 10 crores a year. The second thing I did was no government director in the NRSP board, only professionals. The same model that we repeated in the Poverty Innovation Fund, no government director. So I think that is how the process started. And thank God, because after our government was dismissed in 1993, an effort was made to snatch that from Shoaib Sultan Khan, unfortunately, because it was an endowment, they could do it, and they RSP, mashallah, and NRSP, mashallah, expanded from one state to another. The Pakistan Poverty Innovation Fund came because we realized that it needs microcredit from outside also, and supporting the rural organization. So that was my second tenure as finance minister when the Pakistan Poverty Innovation. So I'm very fortunate that I had this opportunity, and a leader like Shoaib Sultan was needed a little support to carry on this gigantic task, which is now 45% of the country. So I thank him and all of you for this very happy invitation. Thank you.
It's been an honor to be among such accomplished individuals. Thank you all for your patience. Have a good evening, and inshallah see you next year for the book award ceremony of 2019.